The crystal archive hummed with ancient energy as Zephyr placed his six-fingered hand against its surface. The Valdorian archaeologist had spent 3 cycles deciphering the symbols etched into the massive structure they had discovered buried beneath the sands of Kepler 442b. What he found made his twin hearts race with terror. The warning was clear. Written in the oldest known galactic script, "Beware the species from the third rock. They are death incarnate. They are chaos given form. They will consume everything." Zephyr's colleague, Thrain, scoffed as he examined the translation. His insectoid features twisted into what passed for amusement among the Chithari. Primitive superstition, he clicked through his mandibles. This archive is over 50,000 years old. Whatever species they feared is probably extinct by now. The archaeological team had been working on this dig for months. The ruins belonged to the precursors, the mysterious race that had built massive structures across the galaxy before vanishing without explanation. Most scholars believed they had transcended to a higher plane of existence. Zephyr was beginning to suspect something far more sinister. As he continued reading, more details emerged from the crystal's memory banks. The warnings spoke of a young species that had barely discovered fire when the precursors first encountered them. They lived on a death world, a planet so hostile that it regularly tried to kill its inhabitants through weather, geological disasters, and predatory creatures. Instead of becoming weak, this forge of destruction had created something unprecedented. "They adapt to everything," the ancient text continued. "What should kill them only makes them stronger. They turn their weaknesses into weapons. They survive what no rational being should survive." Thrain's amusement faded as more warnings filled the crystal display. "Zephyr, this is starting to sound less like superstition and more like a detailed military assessment." The precursor records spoke of first contact. The ancient beings had been exploring the outer rim of what they called the Barbarian Galaxy when they detected unusual energy signatures from a small blue-green world. Their scouts reported a species that had somehow survived an ice age, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and mass extinctions. These creatures called themselves humans. The precursors had made their first mistake by assuming these primitive beings were harmless. After all, they had barely developed spaceflight, and their technology was thousands of years behind galactic standard. The ancient race decided to study them, the way a scientist might study particularly resilient bacteria. But humans were not bacteria. They were predators. The first research station went silent after 6 months. The precursors assumed equipment failure and sent a larger expedition. That team found their research facility converted into a fortress. The humans had not only escaped containment but had reverse-engineered precursor technology with impossible speed. They had turned the research tools into weapons and the containment fields into shields. When the rescue fleet arrived, they found themselves facing human spacecraft, built from stolen precursor technology. Ships that should have been impossible for such a primitive species to operate, or even understand. The humans had not just learned to use the technology, they had improved it. "This cannot be accurate," Thrain muttered, his compound eyes reflecting the crystal's glow. "No species advances that quickly. The natural progression from primitive to spacefaring takes millions of years." Zephyr continued reading, his own skepticism crumbling with each revelation. The humans had done the impossible. They had taken precursor technology meant for peaceful research and weaponized it in ways the original designers never imagined. Their first space battle lasted 3 minutes. The precursor fleet was completely destroyed, but that was just the beginning. The humans did not stop at defeating the precursors. They began to spread. Each world they encountered became a learning experience. They studied every species, every technology, every military strategy they came across. Then they made it better. They took the best features of each civilization and added their own terrifying innovations. The precursors tried diplomacy. The humans listened politely, signed treaties, and then broke them the moment it became advantageous. They tried economic warfare. The humans simply took what they needed by force. They tried biological weapons. The humans developed immunities and then created counter-weapons that were even more devastating. The most terrifying aspect, the ancient text revealed, is their unity in war. They fight among themselves constantly. never agreeing on anything. But the moment an external threat appears, they become a single organism dedicated to destruction. They call it total war, and they wage it with a creativity that defies comprehension. The Crystal Archive showed tactical analyses that made Zephyr's blood run cold. The humans had developed something called combined arms tactics that coordinated ground forces, aerospace assets, and orbital bombardment in ways that maximized destruction while minimizing their own losses. They created weapons specifically designed to cause psychological terror. They used their enemies' own biology against them. But the most horrifying revelation was their approach to prisoners and captured technology. Where other species might execute captives or hold them for ransom, humans interrogated them extensively, learning everything about enemy capabilities, weaknesses, and internal politics. Then they used that information to turn enemy factions against each other. Thrain's carapace had gone pale. Zephyr, when is this archive dated? When did these events supposedly occur? The archaeologist checked the temporal markers, his hands shaking. According to this, the human expansion began 47,000 years ago. The final precursor evacuation order was issued 45,000 years ago. Evacuation order? The crystal revealed its most terrifying secret. The precursors had not transcended or evolved beyond physical existence. They had fled. The entire advanced civilization had abandoned their technology, their worlds, their achievements, and run to the furthest reaches of the galaxy to escape humanity's expanding sphere of influence. They are inevitable. The final warning read, "They cannot be reasoned with when they decide you are a threat. They cannot be bargained with when they want something you have. They learn from every defeat and return stronger. They turn every victory into a stepping stone toward greater conquests. We have concluded that the only way to survive humanity is to ensure they never know you exist." The archive fell silent, its ancient warnings delivered. Zephyr and Thrain stood in the darkness of the buried chamber, processing what they had learned. The implications were staggering. If the records were accurate, somewhere in the galaxy was a species so dangerous that the most advanced civilization in known history had chosen extinction over continued conflict. "We have to report this," Thrain whispered. Zephyr nodded slowly. "The Galactic Council needs to know. Every species needs to be warned." Neither of them realized they were already too late. High above them, in the orbital space around Kepler 442b, long-range sensors belonging to the Terran exploration fleet had detected unusual energy emissions from the planet's surface. The UES Prometheus was already adjusting course to investigate. Captain Sarah Chen studied the readings with professional interest. Her ship was part of humanity's newest expansion wave, pushing into unexplored sectors in search of new worlds and new technologies. The energy signature matched nothing in their databases, suggesting an unknown alien civilization. "Unknown contacts are always interesting," she told her tactical officer. "Prep a first contact team. Full diplomatic protocols, but keep the Marines ready. You never know what we might find down there." The warning had been delivered 47,000 years too late. Humanity had found them. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of receiving Zephyr's transmission. Representatives from 43 species filled the great chamber on Nexus Prime, their various forms of agitation creating a cacophony of clicks, growls, and electronic pulses that the universal translators struggled to process. Chancellor Vex High, the ancient Etherian who had led the council for the past 2 centuries, called for order with a deep thrumming sound that resonated through the chamber's crystalline walls. His translucent form flickered with nervous energy as he addressed the assembly. "Fellow beings," his voice carried across the chamber through psychic resonance, "we face a crisis unlike any in recorded galactic history. The archaeological evidence presented by the Valdorian expedition suggests that the mysterious disappearance of the precursors was not transcendence, but retreat. They fled from a species they could not defeat." Admiral Korthak of the Drakmari war clans slammed his massive fist against his delegation's platform. The reptilian warrior's battle scars gleamed under the chamber's lights as he spoke. "Impossible! The Drakmari have conquered 100 worlds. Our fleets patrol 50 systems. No single species could threaten the combined might of the Galactic Council. The humans are not like other species, interjected Dr. Linus Kell, the chief xenobiologist from the Cerulean Institute. Her blue skin pulsed with worry patterns as she activated a holographic display. I have been analyzing the precursor records since their discovery. The biological data is unprecedented. These humans evolved on what can only be classified as a death world. The hologram showed a blue-green planet scarred by massive storm systems, volcanic chains, and ice caps that expanded and contracted with frightening regularity. The gathered delegates watched in horror as the display showed the planet's history of mass extinctions, asteroid impacts, and radical climate changes. Their homeworld has tried to kill them for millions of years, Dr. Kell continued. Instead of adapting to specific environments like normal evolution, they became adaptable to any environment. They developed persistence hunting, the ability to literally run their prey to death across vast distances. They survived ice ages that wiped out most other life on their planet. Counselor Thelm of the peaceful Zenthron Collective raised a shimmering tentacle. Surely their primitive nature would make them manageable. Our technology is far advanced compared to what they would have possessed when the precursors encountered them. That assumption cost the precursors everything, Chancellor Vex High replied grimly. The records indicate that human advancement follows an exponential curve. What takes other species millennia to achieve, they accomplish in decades. They do not merely learn from observation, they innovate beyond the original design. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The various species that made up the Galactic Council had reached their current level of development through millions of years of gradual progress. The idea of a species that could advance at an accelerated pace was terrifying to contemplate. General Nexus 7. The artificial intelligence that spoke for the synthetic collective processed the data and delivered its assessment in mechanical tones. Analysis indicates that human cognitive architecture differs fundamentally from standard galactic norms. They possess what they term pattern recognition and intuitive leaps that allow rapid technological integration. Most concerning, they display unprecedented cooperation during external conflicts. What do you mean by unprecedented cooperation? Asked Ambassador Trilos of the Harmony Federation, her crystalline form chiming with concern. Standard galactic species maintain political divisions even during warfare. Nexus 7 explained. Internal conflicts continue to drain resources and divide attention. Humans demonstrate the ability to suspend all internal disputes when facing external threats. They become a single, unified organism, dedicated entirely to victory. Admiral Korthak scoffed. Unity is meaningless without proper military doctrine. The Drakmari have perfected the art of war through countless campaigns. No primitive species could match our strategic capabilities. Dr. Keel's skin flashed red with alarm patterns. Admiral, you misunderstand. The humans did not develop standard military doctrine. They created something called combined arms warfare. They coordinate ground forces, air support, naval assets, and orbital bombardment as a single integrated system, but more terrifying. They wage psychological warfare. The holographic display showed tactical analyses recovered from the precursor archives. The assembled delegates watched in growing horror as human military strategies were explained. The humans had developed weapons designed specifically to break enemy morale. They used captured intelligence to turn allied species against each other. They employed what they called strategic deception on a scale that encompassed entire star systems. They do not merely defeat their enemies, Dr. Kell continued, her voice trembling. They study them first. They learn everything about their biology, their psychology, their social structures, their technological capabilities. Then they craft strategies specifically designed to exploit every weakness while neutralizing every strength. Counselor Thelm's tentacles writhed with distress. Surely the precursors tried peaceful contact. Diplomacy has solved countless conflicts throughout galactic history. The humans negotiated extensively with the precursors, Chancellor Vex High replied. They signed treaties, established trade agreements, and participated in cultural exchanges. Then they used the information gained during peaceful contact to plan more effective military campaigns. They treated diplomacy as intelligence gathering. The chamber erupted in outraged sounds as delegates realized the implications. The foundation of galactic civilization was built on the assumption that advanced species would choose cooperation over conflict. The idea of a species that used peace talks as preparation for war challenged everything they understood about civilized behavior. The records indicate they have a concept called total war, General Nexus 7 added. They commit every available resource to achieving victory. Civilian populations become part of the war effort. Industrial capacity is converted to military production. Scientific research focuses entirely on developing better weapons and defensive systems. Ambassador Trilos's crystalline form darkened with fear. How does such a species ever achieve peace? They don't, Doctor, Kell answered quietly. According to the precursor observations, humans exist in a constant state of low-level conflict. They compete economically, politically, and socially even during peacetime. This constant competition drives innovation and maintains their military readiness. When external threats appear, they redirect this competitive energy outward. The sobering reality settled over the chamber. They were dealing with a species that had been forged by millions of years of environmental catastrophe and constant internal conflict into the perfect predator. A species that turned every interaction into a learning experience and every experience into an advantage. Chancellor Vexhi's form flickered with deep concern. The question before us is clear. Do we attempt contact and risk revealing our existence to a species that destroyed the precursors? Or do we take defensive action while we still have the advantage of surprise? Admiral Korthak rose to his full imposing height. The Drakmari do not run from any fight. If these humans are as dangerous as claimed, they must be eliminated before they become a threat to galactic civilization. And how do you propose we locate them? Asked Dr. Kell. The precursor records are 47,000 years old. Humanity could be anywhere in the galaxy by now. They could have spread across thousands of systems without us knowing. The awful truth of their situation was becoming clear. They were debating whether to fight an enemy they could not locate, whose capabilities they could only guess at, and whose very existence posed a threat to everything they had built. As the council continued their heated debate, none of them noticed the small monitoring probe that had attached itself to the outer hull of Nexus Prime 3 days earlier. The probe was of human design, practically invisible to standard galactic sensors, and had been transmitting everything it observed back to the nearest human listening post. Captain Chen received the intelligence report as the UES Prometheus completed its initial survey of Kepler 442b. The archaeological site below had yielded fascinating insights into both precursor technology and galactic political structures. Her science teams were already working on reverse engineering several promising discoveries. Commander Torres, she called to her executive officer. It looks like we've found something interesting. The local galactic government seems to be debating whether or not to declare war on us. Torres reviewed the transmitted council session and grinned. Should we be flattered that they consider us a threat, or concerned that they know enough about us to be worried? Both, Captain Chen replied, studying the tactical analysis her crew had prepared. Signal the fleet. We're going to need reinforcements. And send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made first contact with a galactic civilization, and they're not very friendly. The warning had been delivered, debated, and dismissed as ancient history. The Galactic Council continued their arguments, unaware that the very threat they feared was already among them, already learning, already planning their next move. The attack came at dawn on Nexus Prime, but it was not what the Galactic Council expected. Instead of warships and orbital bombardments, a single human vessel requested docking permission at the main diplomatic port. The ship was sleek and obviously advanced, but showed no weapons signatures. It transmitted standard diplomatic codes and requested an audience with the council leadership. Chancellor Vexhi convened an emergency session as panic spread through the capital. The humans had found them, but instead of attacking, they wanted to talk. The irony was not lost on anyone. The species they feared for its military prowess had chosen diplomacy. This could be a trick, Admiral Korthak warned, his massive frame tense with barely contained aggression. The records clearly state they used diplomacy as intelligence gathering. The records also state they could have destroyed us already if that was their intention, replied Doctor Kell, though her skin patterns betrayed her nervousness. Perhaps we should hear what they have to say. Oh. The debate was cut short when the human delegation arrived. Chancellor Vexhai had expected armored warriors or calculating strategists. Instead, 3 humans entered the council chamber wearing simple diplomatic uniforms. They looked remarkably ordinary, bipedal, average height, with no obvious natural weapons or defensive adaptations. The lead human was a woman with graying hair and calm eyes. She introduced herself as Ambassador Elena Vasquez, and her manner was so perfectly diplomatic that it made several council members even more nervous. "Honorable Chancellor," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic design, "we understand there has been some concern regarding humanity's intentions in this galaxy. We have come to address those concerns directly." Councillor Thelm's tentacles twitched with barely controlled fear. "You monitored our private council session. That is an act of espionage." Ambassador Vasquez nodded without denial. "We did. We have been observing galactic civilization for several months, learning your customs and political structures. We wanted to understand who we were dealing with before making formal contact." The admission sent ripples of unease through the assembly. The humans were confirming their reputation for intelligence gathering, but doing so with such casual honesty that it was somehow more unsettling than if they had denied it. "We also studied your archaeological discoveries on Kepler 442b, the ambassador continued. "The precursor records make for fascinating reading, though they are somewhat biased against us." The ambassador Contri, General Nexus 7, spoke with mechanical precision. "The records indicate that your species destroyed the most advanced civilization in galactic history. The records indicate that the precursors tried to study us like laboratory animals," Ambassador Vasquez replied, her tone remaining perfectly diplomatic. "They abducted our people, conducted experiments on our worlds, and attempted to treat us as subjects rather than equals." We responded accordingly. Dr. Kell's skin flashed with confusion patterns. "According to our analysis, the precursors were peaceful researchers seeking to understand your unusual evolutionary development." "I'm sure that's how they saw it," the ambassador agreed. "However, from our perspective, alien beings had invaded our space, kidnapped our citizens, and refused to treat us as sovereign entities. The concept of consent seems to have been foreign to precursor culture." The second human, a younger man introduced as Dr. James Foster, stepped forward with a data pad. "We've brought a complete record of human precursor interactions from our historical archives. You'll find that we attempted diplomatic contact 17 times before taking military action." Ambassador Vasquez activated a holographic display that showed a very different version of events than the precursor records. In this telling, the ancient aliens had treated humanity as an interesting biological specimen to be studied and catalogued. When humans protested their treatment and demanded recognition as equals, the precursors had dismissed them as primitive creatures, incapable of true civilization. "The precursors made a fundamental error," Dr. Foster explained. "They assumed that technological advancement automatically indicated moral or intellectual superiority. They refused to acknowledge that a less technologically developed species might have valid perspectives or legitimate grievances." Chancellor Vexhai's form flickered with uncertainty. "Yet you ultimately drove them from the galaxy entirely." "Actually, we didn't," Ambassador Vasquez replied calmly. "According to our records, the precursors withdrew voluntarily after realizing they could not continue their research without our consent. We offered them multiple opportunities to establish peaceful relations based on mutual respect. They chose to leave rather than treat us as equals." The third human, a military officer named Colonel Sarah Kim, spoke for the first time. "The Galactic Council seems to be operating under the assumption that we are some kind of destructive force that will consume everything in our path. May I ask what evidence you have for this belief beyond 47,000-year-old precursor propaganda?" The question hung in the air uncomfortably. The assembled delegates realized they had no direct evidence of human aggression beyond the ancient records. Everything they feared about humanity was based on the testimony of a species that had treated humans as research subjects. Admiral Korthak stood aggressively. "Your species is known for its military capabilities. The records speak of weapons designed to cause psychological terror and strategies that turned allies against each other. Colonel Kim nodded matter-of-factly. We are very good at warfare, when warfare becomes necessary. Our history is full of conflicts, and we have learned from each one. But consider this. If we were the mindless destroyers you fear, why would we be here talking instead of conquering? Perhaps because you wish to deceive us before attacking, the Admiral suggested. Ambassador Vasquez smiled sadly. Admiral, if we wanted to attack you, we wouldn't need deception. We've been observing your military capabilities for months. Your fleets are impressive, but they're designed for conflicts against species with similar technological development. You've never faced an enemy that adapts during battle. The casual confidence in her statement was more terrifying than any threat. She was stating a simple fact, without boasting or intimidation. Dr. Foster activated another display. However, we didn't come here to discuss military matters. We came to discuss cooperation. Humanity has always been interested in learning from other cultures. Your various species have developed remarkable technologies and philosophical frameworks that we would like to understand. Counselor Thelm trembled with confusion. You want to learn from us? But according to the records, you advance faster than any known species. We advance quickly in areas we focus on, the ambassador agreed. But you've had millions of years to develop arts, music, literature, and social structures that we've never encountered. The Drakmari understanding of honor. The Zenthron concepts of collective consciousness. The Etherian mastery of energy manipulation. These are achievements we respect and admire. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans were not here to conquer or destroy. They were here to trade, learn, and grow. The very traits that made them terrifying in warfare. Their adaptability, their pattern recognition, their rapid advancement, were being offered in service of peaceful cooperation. Chancellor Vex High spoke carefully. What do you propose? What do you propose? Cultural and technological exchange, Ambassador Vasquez replied immediately. Mutual defense agreements against external threats. Shared exploration of unknown regions. Standard diplomatic relations between sovereign entities. And if we refuse, Admiral Korthak demanded, then we'll be disappointed. But we'll respect your decision, the ambassador said simply. We'll withdraw to the regions we currently occupy and pursue our own development. We have no interest in forcing cooperation on unwilling partners. The honesty was startling. Most species would have made threats or ultimatums. The humans were offering partnership and accepting that it might be rejected. Dr. Kell's skin patterns shifted to thoughtful blue. Why should we trust you when the precursors clearly feared you enough to flee the galaxy? Colonel Kim answered this time. Because the precursors never tried to understand us. They saw us as subjects to be studied, rather than equals to be respected. You're having this conversation because you're willing to at least consider that we might be reasonable beings with legitimate interests. Ambassador Vasquez leaned forward slightly. The precursors were wrong about many things, but they were right about one. Humanity is different. We are adaptable. We are persistent. And we are very good at learning from our experiences. But they failed to understand that these same traits make us excellent allies and trading partners. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some delegates remained convinced that humanity posed an existential threat. Others were intrigued by the possibilities of cooperation with such an adaptable species. Still others worried about the precedent of rewarding a species that had driven the precursors from the galaxy. In the end, it was General Nexus 7 who posed the crucial question. What assurance can you provide that humanity will honor agreements made here? Dr. Foster answered without hesitation. The same assurance any species can provide. Our word and our actions. We propose a gradual integration program. Start with minor trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Judge us by our behavior, not by 47,000-year-old propaganda from a species that refused to treat us as equals. Chancellor Vex High's decision would reshape galactic civilization. After hours of deliberation, he spoke the words that would begin a new era. The Galactic Council agrees to limited diplomatic contact and cultural exchange with humanity. We will judge you by your actions in the present, not by precursor fears from the past. Ambassador Vasquez smiled genuinely for the first time since entering the chamber. Thank you, Chancellor. I think you'll find that the ancients were wrong about humanity. We're not the monsters they feared. We're just people trying to find our place in a very large universe. As the council session ended and formal diplomatic protocols began, none of the delegates realized they had just made the most important decision in galactic history. Humanity had not come as conquerors or destroyers. They had come as the one thing the precursors had never imagined them to be. They had come as equals,